I always say that the truth will come out in the end. And that when you look at things happening and you think something's not quite right about this, be it an organisation, a movement, charity, or whatever it is, sooner or later, the truth will come out that it wasn't right because your gut instinct serves you right because you're not actually a plank. Now, some of you may remember the big BLM thing over in America, but it also came over here to the UK. And we had the likes of them going around in groups protesting for this, fighting with the cops. But if you remember, in Bristol, they decided to throw the statue of Colston into the river, which in itself was a criminal act. And what they forget to mention about, obviously, Colston is all the philanthropy he did do. Now, the other thing about these people that they never want to mention is the Barbary trade. They never, ever want to talk about the slavery that's going on in the world right now and who's doing it. And by the way, you want to look into that. And who was the first people to do slavery and who were the ones who gave up last. And as I say, some of them haven't exactly given up. Now, slavery, modern day slavery is happening all the time, okay? There's a lot of places that are doing it, but the woke don't want to have a go at that. They want to have a go at some white bloke who couldn't defend himself because he died years ago, and his descendants, and anybody else who had anything to do with it. And some of the clubs that, say, for instance, Colston was involved with, back in the day, who have carried on since then, they started going after the people who were today's members of these clubs, big corporations and stuff like that. And these people were to the left, and they were hit quite hard by this. But I knew that BLM was nothing else but a cultural Marxist propped idea to hoodwink the stupid into feeling they were victims and then get them to cause anxiety amongst their own, get them to search for reparations that they're frankly not due, right? And also to cause a divide in society where black people think white people are the enemy. And the system itself has used black people and abused them and treated them fucking idiots. And there were many idiots that jumped into this. Well, this BLM protest and this Colston statue thing, there was a charity knocked up around that time by a, and I think I've got this right, I think it's spelled X-A-H-R Salim, okay? That's a new name, by the way. So I'm just going to call her, because I can't pronounce it, right, because I'm dyslexic, so I'll get it wrong. But this Salim admitted the offence related to fundraising before Bristol. So let's go. Woman who helped organise Colston statue protest jailed for fraud. Now, this has been a thing with BLM, by the way. Now, I've heard black people say a black man is a black man's worst enemy. That was a black man that said that, by the way, not me. And only just today on Facebook was there a black guy came up and he said, "Do I support Black Lives Matter? Fuck no." And I was like, okay. He said, "Do black people support me? No. Every time I have a problem or whatever, they're the ones that are talking about my back. They're the ones that are sniggering. They're the ones that are glad that I've lost everything." He said, "When I went to prison, so many of them were celebrating because I was, in prison." Now, the one thing I'll always notice that successful black men or black women say about other black people is they want them to fail. Why? I don't get that. I would have thought you'd want a brother or a sister to succeed more than anybody to prove that it can be done. And also, the more black people that succeed in life, the more chances that you have as a black person to get along and get a job with them. Unless that is that they can see through that actually you're not, this is the person and the individual, not them as a collective. That person in particular is not the hardest working person in the world, and also has a chip on their shoulder and is going to cause displacement, misery, upset, or problems in the workplace. Maybe. Not all. So it says here, woman who helped organise Colston statue protest jail for fraud. This woman admitted, this Salim admitted an offence related to fundraising before Bristol BLM protests when slave trader statue was dumped into the harbour. Now, there were charities set up around that time, GoFundMe it were, to pay for the legal costs of the people that hoyed that statue into the river. And as it is, I do believe they walked away from that one and got off. That is, they didn't go to prison. A key organiser of the protest in Bristol, during which statue of slave trader Edward Colston was toppled and dumped into the city's harbour, has been jailed for 2.5 years for fraud. Oh, yeah, I was going to say about the BLM in America. Millions went missing and they ended up with mansions. That's very noble, isn't it? When you're there to set up charities to help your brothers and sisters who are in a situation, but actually what you do is pocket it and fuck them. That's so typical, isn't it? Whatever. Anyway, it says here, this woman, Celine, 23, admitted using more than £30,000 that was supposed to go to a charity for disadvantaged youngsters in the city to fund her lifestyle, including spending almost £6,000 on Uber rides. Excuse me a sec. During a sentencing hearing in Bristol Crown Court, fellow directors of the charity Changing Your Mindset said Salim's crime had led to the organisation shutting down. Apparently, people didn't trust the organisation and thought that they were all the same, which you could understand, although it might not be true. The others might be completely sound. What does it say? They said that she had been suspected of wrongdoing by the community and told the court that a young person who had lost their life might have been saved if the charity had still been going. Alistair Haggerty, prosecuting, said Salim, previously known as Yvonne Mina, was a prominent figure in Bristol and was involved in organising Black Lives Matter march that led to the toppling of the statue on the 7th of June 2020. Just before the march, Salim and a group of people who worked with youngsters in St. Paul's. So this is a woman who's working with youngsters, organising charities and setting up and organising a criminal event. What sort of impact is she going to have on kids? I can't imagine her giving a level and biased opinion to people if she is that way inclined. But we'll carry on. Changing your mindset, money was to be raised to go for... Right, so just before the march, Salim and a group of young people who worked with the youngsters of St. Paul's area of the city set up Changing Your Mindset with money to be raised through a GoFundMe page. The idea was to fund weekly support sessions plus an additional visit to Africa. Going back to your roots. After toppling the statue made headlines around the world, more than 500 donations flooded in. Haggerty said Salim had succumbed to temptations and began using the money on herself. Over a 15-month period, she spent the funds on rent, an iPhone, an iMac, purchases on Amazon, hair and beauty appointments, takeaways and Uber rides. That's helping your brothers and sisters no end, isn't it? You're living high on the hog, and they're all still suffering, and in this case, dying. I refer to my earlier statement. Anyway, what does it say? She made a string of false excuses about why she had not handed in the money over to the charity, including that Black Lives Matter had advised her not to, but in the summer of 2021 admitted the money had gone. I'd like to have seen the faces on the people when she told them that. In a victim impact statement, Rebecca Scott, who received an MBE for her services to the community in 2021, said she had helped Salim organise the BLM protest in Bristol and was pleased with what it achieved, criminal damage. Brilliant. So somebody gets an MBE whose mindset is so well slanted that they help people organise criminality and hang around with people who are of the mindset of criminality themselves. It's wonderful. She was also delighted when so much money was raised in the aftermath of Changing Your Mindset. This felt like a chance to really have an impact, she said. They were blown away by how much money was raised. After it became clear that the money had gone, she and other directors who were made to feel complicit in what had happened, she said young people had lost trust in them and they had made the decision to close. Scott said a young person they had been supporting had died. What if we could have intervened, she asked. Apparently, the young person had died in a stabbing incident in Bristol. And that also seems to be a problem in the community. Another director, Jay Royal, said that the last 2 years have been a nightmare. She said one of the young persons had needlessly died. We could have been the people who would save that young person. Tom Edwards, defending, said Salim was extremely sorry and felt great remorse. He accepted what she did was an abuse of her position, but said she was only 20 and she was entrusted with a very large amount of money. It goes on. But the point being is this, that Black Lives Matter got some of the worst creatures together to go out and create or commit criminality under the guise that they were trying to make aware that black people were oppressed, that black people were not heard properly, that black people were passed over for jobs, etc., when all of this is utter bullshit. And then they made people who were like, I don't know, say, for instance, born within the last 15 or 20 years, feel that they need reparations for slavery that happened way beyond. Now, an interesting fact for some of these BLM idiots to realize is that people like me have actually paid into the reparation of slavery. I shall explain that many years ago, our country spent 40-something% of its GDP, right, for that year, I should say, to buy the freedom of slaves, okay? That obviously was a loan that we ended up having to take out and then pay back over a long period. And it's only recently been paid off within my lifetime, not that long ago. So part of my taxes, etc., went into paying for that. So some of us here have actually done their bit, although it was done before my lifetime and I ended up paying the bill. And this is another thing. Things that happen within our lifetime here, our kids will pay the bill for. Take, for instance, the money that we borrowed during the time that COVID was going on. These are debts that will take years and years and years, hundreds of years to pay off. And our kids, grandkids, kids will be paying this debt. So there it is. It just shows that BLM, well, just actually, if you look at it, that woman who ended up getting shot in the head, that really, really choppy BLM woman, right, ended up getting fucked over by her own group because they were jealous of her position. There was a lot more to it, obviously. But it seemed that the entire setup gave power to individuals that were corrupt, bent, criminal-minded, and just generally a shower. And I think the power should have been given over to people who are a lot more level-headed within that community to deal with. But hey, as is always the case, there are people that will jump in that have their own selves to think about and how much they can make out of a situation. We have people on our side that have taken severe amounts of money over different things that people gave their money to willingly and thought they were doing good causes and haven't done anything with it. It is what it is. People are that way inclined. But there you go. Anyway, I shall get on and do some more content. Pardon me. Don't drink coffee this early in the morning, at least not two of them anyway. And then we'll go off to the gym and do a bit of good there. So I will see you in a bit.